Over the past couple of years, I have spent an insane amount of hours on this world building project, building this planet to a place that feels like a new sense of home. Building it was incredibly hard. I failed so many times before I finally got a sense of direction that I liked. I tore it down, I rebuilt it, tore it down again, rebuilt it again. In this video, I want to show you guys how this planet started, and we're going to go on a journey, and I'm going to show you how it came to be what it is. Along the way, I'm going to talk about the lore behind the geographical features, as well as share the process, the struggles, and insights that I've learned along the way. This is the behind the scenes creation of Planet Lumin. Real quick before we jump into the video, I just wanted to welcome you guys to my world building channel. Here, you'll find a bunch of cool videos, stories, behind the scenes, a bunch of lore, all that kind of stuff. Also, I want to make this channel as collaborative as possible. So if you guys have any cool ideas for things that you want to see me build, let's build it together. Let me know in the comments. But anyways, my name is Travis. This is Dreams of Lumin. Let's jump into the video. So long before I ever started making this world in 3D space, I came up with some really cool and interesting ideas for cultures and societies and just stuff like that. And I needed a place to make those come alive. I had no idea where to start, but I found this interesting software called Gaea, which allows 3D artists to make landscapes. And so I knew I had to start there. And eventually, after a lot of experimentation, I came up with what I thought was just a perfect map. To me, it was really, I liked how symmetrical it was, but I also liked how it wasn't like a bunch of different countries that were divided and separate around a globe. It was more of just like what I thought at the time was a Grand Theft Auto 5 map, where it's like everything was right there, just together. And I really liked that because that kind of fit in with some of the lore that I had created for the planet already. And so I went with it, and suddenly I had this like blank map that I needed to start adding landscapes to, and I had no idea where to start. But I found inside of Gaea a little node called the mountain node. I'm from Colorado and I love the mountains. I'm highly inspired by just nature, and on pretty much all my days off, I'm up in the mountains with my laptop, crossing rivers and finding a nice place to write and build this world, really from a concept point of view. And so adding mountains seemed like the best place to start, but I wanted them to be something unique. So I was experimenting, just trying some different things. And that's when I found the swirl node. And the swirl node was cool because, I don't know, it just created this really interesting visual look for the mountains. And it really just got my brain started. Like, how did this come to be? What's the lore behind this? And I ended up coming up with some really cool concepts. Like a wildly raging hurricane, the spiral mountains twist their way far into the clouds, rising higher than anything else on Lumin. Deriving their name from their unique spiral shape, the story behind the mountains is as tumultuous as the geography itself. Sitting near the center of Lumin's only major continent, the spiral mountains are a product of what were once two massive tectonic plates that chaotically collided in a meteor-induced infusion of spinning molten rock. Eventually, as the formerly individual plates grinded their way to a single multiplied resting place, the large whirlpools of magma cooled into the hurricane-like spiral mountains we know today. So basically, the concept that I came up with was thousands of years ago, a massive natural event happened on planet Lumin that I referred to as the branch meteor impact. Lumin actually used to have two giant continents on the planet. The meteor basically set one of the continents on a collision path with the other continent, but they didn't collide head on. The two continents actually collided side by side in a way that grinded them together, allowing for the edges of each previous continent to become completely molten. And as they were slowly grinding to a halt, those molten edges started to swirl because they're just liquid rock that produced these interesting spirals that really just grew incredibly tall, way taller than anything else on the planet. And then after thousands of years of cooling down, the mountains were just such a rich source of nutrients and stuff like that, and it allowed for so many interesting plants and very tall trees and geodes and minerals of all kinds to just be found. It was really a bountiful world that was unlike anything else on Lumin. And the cool part as the creator for this is that this so much reminds me of Rampart Range, Colorado, which is where I live, and is, to me, it's my favorite place in the world. It's where I love to go. A lot of the times when I'm like off in the mountains writing somewhere, that's where I am. And this perfectly captures that vibe but it makes it more fantastical. Like it's like the Lord of the Rings somehow made its way into my home mountain range, and I just love it. So the Spiral Mountains are by far my favorite spot on Lumin, but there were so many other cool things I had in mind, and I still had a large blank map that I had to fill out. And that is where I came up with the idea for the branch meteor impact. Besides being just a really unique natural phenomenon that happened on the planet, I wanted something that created a world unlike anything else on the landscape. And I came up with the idea of the branch meteor impact. I really like this idea that if Lumin is a world where things have evolved to be so much more advanced than they are here on Earth, there has to be a part of the landscape where things evolved wrong. They evolved to be wicked or evil or just feel off. And that is the guiding philosophy that I took to create the branch meteor impact. Forged out of chaos and refined through wickedness, the branch impact crater is a dark, sinister land where the world has gone completely wrong. Blackened clouds reign overhead as blood-red soil vibrantly screams through the harsh shadows of the jagged canyon walls that suffocatingly surround. But for all of the unnaturally twisted creations of a natural world gone completely wrong, a new layer of prevailing electric green life regains the wondrous beauty held before the land went incredibly wrong. Once a vibrantly lush, soul-calming plantland whose beauty could only be rivaled by the galaxy-renowned Moonlight Ridge, hell on Lumin was unleashed with the impact of the branch meteor. So now I think it's time that I talk about Luminite. Luminite is something that originally started just because I'm obsessed with minerals and crystals. I have a couple good collections of minerals and crystals that really inspire me and I just love. And of course, I had to somehow include those in my world. And so I began wondering, why do these minerals and crystals glow? And the most obvious solution I could come up with was they were full of energy. That was obvious to me because I'll get into a lot of this at another video, but the main concept and theme of the world is technology allowing for people to not have to worry about surviving. They don't have to go get jobs. They don't have to work. They just live. And how would that be possible without free energy? Somebody has to pay for it. And what if that would be pretty impossible on Earth, unless the pyramids are what we think they are. So I created Luminite. And that brings me to the next interesting feature on the map. There had to be a source of all of this energy. There had to be a way for it to kind of work. And so I created the Voltaic Mountains. There's a North Mountain and a South Mountain, and they both work the same interesting way. And that is basically that they are the capturers of this energy. So the limitless energy thing on Lumin really starts from the clouds. The clouds have this weird form of magnetism that captures the solar energy from the sun. They're incredibly efficient at capturing the solar energy from the sun, and they transfer it down to the planet through basically giant magnetic lightning storms that interact with the minerals in the Voltaic Mountains. And that energy spreads throughout the entire planet through giant veins of luminite that runs throughout the ground. So everywhere you see on planet that is glowing blue, that's a limitless source of energy. However, if those crystals get disconnected from the ground, they lose their energy. So you have to keep it connected on Lumin. A couple of other things I'd like to mention. Over in this corner, I got this landscape that I have yet to really go through. It's called Black Sands. I envision basically imagine the most wondrous coral-filled parts of the ocean had dried up. The plants here, they're not really plants, they're just kind of petrified corals that reign high above people's heads. Haven't built that yet. Definitely will someday. Of course, you got the rivers that run on each side of the Spiral Mountains. The rivers are cool because they glow with luminite. There's huge luminite veins below the river itself, so the rivers kind of give off this glowing moonlight blue, and that's where the name Moonlight Ridge comes from. So now that I had my basic planet with a few of the important features laid out in front of me, I knew I had to jump into the next phase of creating this planet, which was texturing, and this was a nightmare. I had never attempted texturing something so large, and the thing about this was it needed to make sense, and it actually needed to fit the different biomes that I had in my head. So I started in Gaea, creating these masks that would allow me to place different textures on specific parts of the map and blend them together in a way that actually was based on the geography itself. All in all, I had about 20 of these different masks that I ended up using, each designed for a different part of the landscape itself. Throughout the whole landscape, I ended up putting about 38 different textures across it. A couple of the standout features were, of course, the spiral mountains, which glow heavily with the luminite, but it's also mixed with a bunch of different pine trees and kind of grassy fields. And that kind of grassy pine tree, Colorado-ish look and feel descended to the whole western half of the hemisphere, which I call Castle Meadows. Castle Meadows is cool because it's kind of plains and it's kind of fields. Later on in Lumin's history, this is where a lot of like suburban society lives. And this is where a lot of the world is more focused on just human life rather than the planet. And then we go east across the Spiral Mountains. And this is where things get kind of weird. This is where a lot of the next level nature that seems to have really emotion and psychologically manipulating. I shouldn't say manipulating because it's positive. It's beneficial. It's borderline magic. It's where things would never happen on Earth, but they're not magic. It's just like next level nature that really has effects on the human emotional and mental state. And to represent that, I chose this really dark, green, rich plant land. But anyways, moving on to the branch impact crater, I wanted this to basically be Moab, so of course I got this really rich, bright red soil that interweaves with dark luminite canyon walls that kind of suffocatingly surround. The branch impact crater is this world that's kind of finally moving on from this natural disaster. It's slow, but it's getting there. So there's this slight overgrowth above this dead world that is just fighting for survival, and it's winning. And then we get to the voltaic mountains. Of course, these are very snow-covered lands, and so texturing these was pretty simple. I obviously just kind of blended rock, snow, and luminite, and that's how I got this. And then, finally, it was time. My final finishing touch on this entire project was a layer of luminite that brought this thing that I have been building for months in my head into reality. And when I first saw it, I basically shit myself. It was so cool, and that is when I knew the project was done. So now, I think it's time to show you a cinematic for everything that we just built. Enjoy. What I have here, this is certainly not a finished product. This is a beginning. This is a really good template and just a whole world yet to be built that is going to take just decades and decades of my life. And most importantly, again, I want some help on this. So comment below some suggestions you might have. I want to see what you guys dream of. I want to build something with you. Anyways, thanks for checking out this video. If you liked it, there's going to be a ton more just like it. All the lore, all the world building, all the behind the scenes. I got a lot more coming your way. So hit subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you next time.